Hello again, ladies and gentlemen, and other assorted gender assignations. Welcome back to the Bored To Death Bingecast. I'm Jay Winger, being joined by
Chris.
And we are resuming our binge of Netflix's Castlevania, beginning Season 2, which is 8 episodes long, so we'll be doing a 2-part binge. When we left off after Season 1, the main trio had just formed with Trevor Belmont, Sypha, and Alucard.
Yes,
they were all getting ready to go take the fight to Dracula himself in the town of Grestin or something like that. Just basically been overrun by demons.
Yeah,
they'd saved some people, but the town's still under attack from demons. So
yeah, it's still under siege right now.
We are, I will go ahead and say this now in a proper Bingecast edition. We are now also a part of the CKCC Radio community of podcasts. You can find us on Podbean. I believe we're on Spotify and iTunes now. The CKCC Radio in general is on those platforms. So
nice.
All of the various podcasts of CKCC Radio are part of it. The Club Kayfabe Wrestle Talk, J Bunny's Music Hub, Paranormal Talk, the Race Nerd Podcast, and various others. So you can find us there, as well as still on the BTD Bingecast YouTube channel, where we will still be uploading all this. But yeah, last time we talked Castlevania, it was a good first season. Set up everything
short and sweet,
but clearly more exposition.
Yeah, it's more of the setup.
Yeah, it was the setup, and now, presumably in Season 2, the plot's really going to kick off.
Here's your appetizer, Season 2 is the main course, and Season 3 is dessert.
Sure.
And then let's see...
You've seen it, so you could...
I still haven't seen Season 3, so I'm going in blind with that one.
Awesome, so that'll be great. We did touch briefly on the Castlevania Netflix series in our Assassin's Creed Ramblecast. But, yeah, that's about it for this intro, I think. We saw everything going on. Dracula is looking to wipe out the entire country of Wallachia because his wife was burned at the stake by the bishop, who met a very fitting end in the last episode of last season.
He quite literally sucked face with a demon.
Well, it's more accurate to say the demon sucked his face and his blood, and presumably some of his internal organs as well. But so yeah, we're gonna get back into it. See some proper vampire hunting and demon slaying going on. You can find Castlevania on Netflix, but for now, we'll see you after the binge. And we're back following the binge. So good. It was an interesting first half of the season. It introduced a bunch of new characters, basically Dracula's war council,
which are all vampires except for 2 people.
Hector and Isaac, the only 2 humans in there who are completely dedicated to Dracula's plan to wipe out humanity. Although it has to be said, Isaac is 100% down with total genocide. Hector thinks that the plan is for a culling and keep the survivors as livestock.
Yeah, it almost sounds like, if I remember correctly, in Blade Trinity, they had something similar to that, where they came across a bunch of humans that were, best way I can describe it, ziplocked.
Yeah, was that 3?
Yeah,
it was 3. I couldn't remember if they had something similar in Blade 2.
No.
Blade 2 introduced the super vampires.
The the ones where their mouths opened up.
Yep. And that just sort of, the whole humans as livestock thing is a trope that I've seen in some vampire franchises.
They kind of did it in an episode of The Strain.
I haven't seen that one, but that's the one that was based off of Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah, his comic book series, and del Toro went and did he did like the entire scripts, all the scripts for season 1. He couldn't really stick around for that story, but there's an episode where the group of vampires, and the way vampires are portrayed in this are parasites, which I guess is an insult that's said to Godbrand in one of the episodes.
It's a common vampire insult.
Well, in this case, they're pure parasites. If we ever get around to doing a binge
if I ever get around to watching it, we have enough on the binge list without needing to add much more to it.
So like the group of vampires that you see in this, in like the first couple of seasons, they are led by someone who is called the Master, and then you find out later on that the Master is part of was part of another group of like elder vampires that are old as dirt, because like they kind of just sit there and twitch and whatever. They're still flesh and bone, they're still alive, but they're, like I said, they're old as dirt. And when they are brought a human for them to feed on, they suddenly come to life, come down, and then feed off of them. Basically.
But I've seen one of the terms I've seen used in some vampire franchises, or franchises that have vampires, when referring to humans, is to refer to them as kine. One of my favorite though is from the Dresden Files, and I'll talk a little bit more about them, and I'll talk a little bit more about Dresden Files for a bit, but there's a scene in one of the books when Harry is fighting a duel against a vampire noblewoman, and they're using magic against one another, and he manages to deal a lethal blow to her, and she can't believe it. She's like, you are cattle," and he just responds with "moo" before he annihilates her. And the Dresden Files books, there's like 4 different vampire courts that populate the world, only 3 of which get any real focus so far. There's the Jade Court is specifically mentioned to be somewhere in Asia, and fills all the Asian vampire tropes. We haven't seen any of those, but the Red Court are ones kind of like, as you know, I mentioned this to you before, that they're like the vampires from Dusk Till Dawn. They're like monsters, specifically described looking like bat demons in a way, that just wear human skin suits. And there's the White Court, who are emotion eaters. There's one family that feeds on fear. There's one that feeds on despair, and then there's the main one that rules the White Court, which feeds off lust, and who secretly control the porn industry. And then there's the Black Court, who are almost extinct because they're the ones that are explicitly like Dracula. They're literally like animated corpses that feed off of blood and have all of the weaknesses from Bram Stoker's Dracula. In the books, I think they even specify that the wizards got Bram Stoker to publish his novel as a way of getting that knowledge out to the general public to help them hunt the Black Court down. But yeah, it's the whole humans as livestock thing is,
it's been used so many times.
It's been used so many times before, and it comes up a number of times in the 4 episodes that we binged just now.
Yeah, like
because Hector thinks that's what the ultimate plan is.
Basically, just turn humans into livestock.
Yeah.
And
as pets, basically.
Basically that, and the character Godbrand, who is one on Dracula's War Council,
a Viking.
Viking vampire. Which, when I first saw him, I was kind of confused at first. When I
you thought he was Scottish.
I thought he was Scottish, but then he goes,
I'm a fucking Viking.
It was the hair. But yeah,
and some of the design of his outfit, really.
Yeah, that didn't help either, because there wasn't a whole lot of fur.
Right.
But yeah, he is asking Dracula, like, so what are we going to do in terms of food? Like, once we wipe out all the humans, He goes, well,
you'll be taken care of.
You'll be taken care
I got
of.
all these cold tanks filled with blood, and we've got animals that kept below the castle.
And then Godbrand is like, I can't drink pig's blood because it gives me the shits.
Godbrand is a great character. It helps that he's voiced by Peter Stormare.
Yeah,
Peter Stormare is just great in whatever role he's put in.
And he can't take it anymore. And he asks for like some blood in a beer, and they bring him a pig. He goes,
fucking hell. He's like,
so he gathers like some of the other members of the war council. He's like, there's a village like 20 miles out of here. Let's go and get something to eat.
Go get something to drink. So they're literally going binge drinking.
Yeah, and they go and they basically massacre this entire town. And it's funny because you also see these different vampires who are from other countries doing something different. Like the Chinese one turns into a mist and pops up in someone's house.
Yep.
You have like there was either a Japanese or an Indian one, the one who had the two swords.
I think she was supposed to be Indian, or at least from the Indian subcontinent region sort of stuff. Had that sort of aesthetic.
There was one who I think was Russian, but he doesn't talk.
Yeah,
but I think it was
he
just
had a very very Russian sort of vibe about it.
Yeah, I can't remember what weapon he used though.
Was he the one that had like the big pole arm?
Yeah, that was him.
Yeah.
And yeah, they basically just rode into town, massacred it. It looked like a I wouldn't say toned down version, but a shorter version of 30 Days of Night.
30 Days of Night. Yeah, I read the first collected volume of that thing, and I did see the movie. Yeah, it's the very basic, very real sort of idea. It's just like 30 Days of Night, I swear they got the idea for the comic, which led to the movie, from a line from the first Max Payne game.
What was the line?
Well, it's there. You can overhear some of the enemies like chatting in the next room. They stop immediately if you burst through the door. But so if you hang back for a little bit and let them talk, one of the mooks is just sort of like, fucking vampires. Why are they always trying to pop up in LA or Mexico? Kind of thing. If I were a vampire, I'd move to the North Pole. Winter's one long night. And one of the other mooks is like, yeah, what are you gonna do? Suck blood from penguins? Nah, Eskimos, man, Eskimos. It's a great little line, and I swear it must have gotten somebody to think, I know, I have an idea for a comic book now.
Actually, what's funny is it was supposed to be a movie first.
Well, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, it's a nice little fact.
Interesting thing, in the comic, the vampires who go with the plan to, like, wipe out this town over the course of over the long night.
Yeah, the rest of the vampires fucking hated them for that.
It's just sort of like, you fucking idiots. Now people are going to figure out what happened, and they're going to come hunt us down. So, whereas in the movie, it was just treated like, yeah, this is just a thing that they do.
Basically, yeah.
I liked the comics approach better because it made it look like it was the younger vampires who came up with the plan, and the older ones are just like, we are careful about this shit. What the fuck are you doing?
So, in all honesty, it's kind of like when, after Godbrand led those vampires to that town, at first I honestly thought that Dracula was going to find out and was going to either kill him or was going to beat the ever-living hell out of him.
Yeah, I had the...
and then leave him alive as, a form of punishment. Like, I'm not going to kill you, but I'm not going to help you anymore. And he ends up being killed by Isaac.
Yeah. Because he basically reveals to Isaac the plan that's going on, because one of the other members of the War Council who turns up in the first episode is Carmilla.
Yeah.
Who is treated like she's a minor vampire lord from, like, who rules some region somewhere up in Skyrim, apparently, because we see a flashback in the castle that she's from. Looks like one of the barrows from fucking Skyrim. But as soon as I heard her name, Carmilla, I was like, so they're throwing in more vampire references there, because Carmilla was a story that predates Bram Stoker's Dracula. Deals with a female vampire.
Huh.
I mean, Dracula's the one everybody thinks of because it sort of popularized everything. But Carmilla, when I heard her name, I was like, throwing in more of the references there. But she's not happy with the course of the war, and so are a lot of the other generals, because they point out there's no real plan here.
It's just show up and massacre everybody.
Yeah, and they're like, that seems, just too chaotic. If you were going to wage a war, you need to have a plan of attack. You need to have some order to it.
Plus, one of the things that she keeps bringing up, and it does piss Dracula off, is why did you turn your wife into a vampire?
Yeah. It's because, well, in her case, I think it's because I get the impression she was turned as a relatively young woman. We don't know how long she's been a vampire, but she may not have ever really never really had a chance to love anyone.
No,
and thus can't really relate to anybody as a result of that.
Whereas Dracula
found somebody that actually showed that she had compassion and tried to convince him humanity's not all that bad, and it would have worked.
If the church hadn't
the fucking bishop hadn't shown up, the freaking science-denying bishop.
well, if you think, though, at that point in time, they were viewing things like science as, devil worshipping or, form of witchcraft.
Back then?
Yeah. Okay, maybe a little bit today.
Yeah, I was about to say science.
But not as
science
bad.
Denying is absolutely a thing that's going on nowadays.
But not as bad, because I remember my dad was watching or showing me an episode of Neil deGrasse Tyson's little show, and he actually had
Cosmos.
No, not Cosmos. It was the talk show, the little talk show that he has. And one of the guests that he had on there was a priest.
Mm. Yep.
So that was kind of interesting to watch. But yeah, and that's the reason why she ended up getting killed, was because she used science
to try to help
people by making medicine.
And the church just looked at that as witchcraft,
exactly.
and alchemy, and didn't help that she had a fucking centrifuge in her.
And one of the low level priests was like, it moves on its own.
Yeah, and that immediately sort of cemented it as some sort of witchcraft.
Yeah, so he ordered the bishop,
and she tried to convince him. It's like, you don't know what you're doing.
You see,
I can't guarantee you'll be safe if you kill me.
That's what confuses me, is why did she tell them who her husband was? Because maybe it would have helped, but
then again, given that bishop, if she basically said that I'm married to Dracula, that would have basically convinced them all the more. Burn the witch.
Well, her last name alone, her married last name alone,
which makes me wonder if by the time Lisa went to him, if he hadn't been so removed and from everybody, been away from the world, sequestered himself into his castle way out wherever the fuck in Wallachia, that maybe people had started to forget who he was.
That's always a possibility. Like, some people probably would have been like, oh, Dracula's a myth, he never actually existed before, and then he shows up and massacres an entire town because they burned his wife at the stake.
Well, first he shows up and basically tells everyone, you have a year to either put your affairs in order or get the hell out of Wallachia before I kill you all.
And none of them listened.
Nope. And a year later, they thought it was just some sort of weird vision that everybody had, and didn't really stop to think that it was real. And, well, yeah.
Next thing you know, everybody's dead.
And Isaac and Hector are specifically referred to as like forge masters. They have like the ability to
necromancy.
They do necromancy. Hector is the one we see doing it the most. Isaac, we only see him use it once to bring one of the night ghouls back to life to find out where it had been. But Hector, we see him basically taking the corpses from Greshit and starting to revive them as zombies and ghouls and other creatures using this like magical hammer. And the hammer actually had the 2 little coins from his flashback scene embedded in the sides of it. I noticed that in one of the later scenes as he's sort of turning the hammer over in his hands. I saw the one coin on one side and the other coin on the other. I was like, oh, that's a nice touch, you know. But
and more on him. The thing is that he, I think they said that it was a form of alchemy that he was using. And
I get the impression that the stuff that he and Isaac do is magic that vampires can't perform.
Possibly,
because otherwise it's just like otherwise it's like, why not just turn them? But if it's a magic that only humans can use...
Well, God Brand did say that it was human magic.
There you go.
So there's that. But yeah, it showed him when he was young that he was more interested in bringing dead animals back to life.
As pets, basically.
As pets, yeah. And then he would bring them home.
And horrify his parents.
And... Then, like,
and they beat him for it.
Yeah, they beat him for it, and then he retaliated by setting the house on fire with them still inside. Mm-hmm. You don't see it, but you hear it.
Yeah, there's an audio flashback for it, and I'm just like, I can see why his parents were horrified. I don't necessarily approve of them beating him for it, but you know. We need to talk about Hector, you know, sort of thing.
And
your son is basically a walking pet cemetery.
And in the case of Isaac, it was his flashback was him being whipped because he apparently stole something from
he stole books basically from the priest that was his master.
Yeah,
but you know, Isaac was just stealing them because he wanted to learn how to read, so he can help the priest, and the priest is like touched by it, and then just keeps whipping him. And so
this is how I love you.
Yeah, this is how I express my love. And it's like, I mean, you can understand why Isaac would would start hating people, especially in a later flashback we find out that he first met Dracula when Dracula saved him from some brigand magicians that wanted to kill him to harvest his organs for use in potions and shit.
Yeah, and he also apparently he can also hear Dracula moving or like walking on sand, and Dracula's like
that's actually impressed. Yeah,
he's like, that's impressive. Nobody can actually hear me.
Most people can't hear me move at all. And I think Isaac basically said, there's nothing else around my house but sand. Even the animals stay away. It's just sort of like, when you're surrounded by nothing, yeah, people are probably gonna, you know, you're gonna learn how to notice when that sort of stuff is going on.
And then there's also more development with Belmont with
the trio.
I almost called him Simon.
I know. Trevor, Sypha, and Alucard decide to go to the Belmont estate because Trevor says, my family has the Belmont hold under our house where we kept everything. It's just like tons of knowledge and artifacts that we could use to try to find something that can kill Dracula.
I remember in the
go ahead.
I remember in the original game, if I remember correctly, the best way to kill Dracula in the game was to use the what was it? The holy water, I think. Yeah, it was that because it would glitch him out to where he wouldn't be able to do anything. You just sit there, just keep throwing at him, and then he eventually dies.
Yeah, and I think I actually saw. That was in the original game, you said?
That was in the original game.
I think I saw Bit Brigade exploit that for their speed run during their concert at MagFest one year, because they did Castlevania as the game that they were playing the music for.
I remember them doing that, but the one that I saw them doing was Mega Man.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing them do Mega Man. And I can't remember if the guy beat the yellow demon legit or if he used the common exploit.
Pause.
Given the fact that he's using an emulator, I'm guessing he probably had to beat him legit. But the one that impressed me was them doing Legend of Zelda.
The original?
Uh-huh. In less than an hour. The guy beat all of the dungeons and beat Ganon while the rest of the band is playing the music from the game. And I was just like, that's impressive to me.
How many times have you done this?
Especially, yeah.
While they're exploring the Belmont family cavern...
It's a huge freaking library and collection.
It's
a freaking museum.
It's essentially kind of like I've only seen this episode once of Home Improvement where they went into Wilson's basement and it was a cave. And my dad's sitting there laughing his ass off. I was like, what? He goes, Wilson's basement is just a big-ass cave. And... so in this, it's got all the knickknacks in it, all the magic stuff.
Yeah, I spotted a Medusa head in one of the cabinets, and you pointed out like the cross next to it.
Yeah, because when I saw the cross, I was like, wait, that's the cross from the throwing crosses from the original game. I was like, okay,
there's probably tons of other references in there that we missed, but it's just sort of like I noticed the Medusa head. I was like, wait a second. I actually rewinded it so I could point it out to you.
That's when I noticed the cross that's literally sitting next to it, and it's one of the like I said, it's one of the throwing ones from the original game. And then of course they name dropped one of the other Belmont characters,
Leon Belmont.
Yeah, who was from
Curse of Innocence, I think you said, or something like that. Something of Innocence.
Curse of Innocence, yeah. But I that's one of the ones that I don't really...
Lament of Innocence.
Lament of Innocence, yeah.
Curse of Darkness is the one that you said Hector and Isaac were from.
Yeah, Lament of Innocence is one of the PlayStation 2 games.
Okay. But, yeah, the scenes with the trio, which there were fewer of those than there were for Dracula and his war council, which makes sense. When you introduce some new characters like that, you want to make sure that you give them some character development so they're not just... two-dimensional characters.
Yeah,
like, because we discussed this a bit during the Gundam binge. Like humanizing all sides of a conflict kind of thing. They sort of did that with Isaac and Hector, sort of giving some explanation as to why they would be fine with Dracula declaring war on humanity. But at the same time, you're just sort of like, you guys are fucked in the head.
Well, long story short, they don't like humans very much.
Yeah.
They are people.
Yeah. But, yeah, the scenes with the trio, especially, I liked that they established that the three of them very quickly got comfortable with one another, that they're able to joke with one another.
Well, especially between... Trevor and Alucard.
Oh, yeah, because they're constantly just sniping at each other.
Didn't Alucard call him a cockwart at one point?
No, it was Trevor responding to Alucard and calling him a cockwart.
Oh yeah.
Just like, but yeah, Alucard is just constantly making cracks about how his family, which hunted down supernatural creatures and demons and vampires, had hidden the entrance to their cavern of their museum under a magic door.
Oh, the irony!
He's just like and Trevor's just sort of like, so my family used magic that doesn't make us black magicians, and he just makes some crack about this, like, that Talak means of death, right? It's the black magic door of death. He's just constantly cracking wise about it, and it's just, I liked that whole thing. Like, they get along well, because we do get one scene in the first 4 episodes where the three of them take down a group of the Night Horde, and Alucard and Trevor work very well together, and then Sypha just basically uses her fire magic to blow one of the demons up from the inside.
Literally, I think she manipulated the flames that were inside of him.
Well, yeah, it started to glow. Its chest started to glow as I got ready to belch fire at them again, and she just goes and controls the fire within it and just causes it to explode.
Yeah, and then it gets its bits and pieces everywhere.
Yeah.
Like
this, they get along well together, but Alucard and Trevor still don't really like each other.
No. Like when Trevor was talking about how he was like, oh yeah, I would have, killed you and turned you into a pair of shoes.
Yeah. Well, it's just, I think it was when Trevor first mentioned, when they were still in Gresham before they left, that they needed to go to the Belmont estate because of what his family had there. It's just like, I can't make use of any of the magic, the books of magic and stuff in there, but you guys might be able to figure it out. And Alucard is just sort of like, I guess it's a good thing that I didn't kill you and drink your blood. And then Trevor just fires back, it's like, I guess it's a good thing I didn't kill you and turn you into a pair of shoes.
And then there was, who was it, Hector's response to Godbrand. He's like, you haven't met anybody that you wanted to kill, fuck, or turn into a boat.
And I was just sort of like, do you wonder if he does it in that order?
That's up for debate.
Yeah, it just sort of reminded me of the Reavers and Firefly.
Oh yeah,
when Zoe first says to,
they're gonna rape us, they're gonna kill us,
they're gonna rape us, kill us, and turn us into clothes. And if we're very, very lucky, they'll do it in that order. Or it's like no, kill us, rape our flesh, and wear our skin as clothes. And if we're very, very lucky, they'll do it in that order. But yeah, it was a good series, and throughout it all, when they kept coming back to Hector's workshop, we keep seeing the bodies from Gresham.
One of them is the bishop.
And one of them is the bishop's body, and I'm just looking at it every time I see it. I'm like, that is foreshadowing. He is gonna turn the bishop into some sort of super ghoul or something.
Something like that.
And I know you've seen season 2.
Well, I saw
but you can't remember specifically what happened.
Well, I saw season 2 when it first came out.
Yeah, and that was more than a year ago.
Yeah, so it was like I watched it and then I was like, all right, let's wait for season 3 to come out. And now season 3's out, but we're doing this, when we get around to doing the binge for season 3, it's going to be a double blind season. Yeah.
So, just like I think, as I mentioned to you. Off mic, I started watching The Boys on Prime because I heard good things about the series. It's another fucked up one, but then it's based off of Garth Ennis comics, so it's not surprising.
Yes, because he said, I want to outdo Preacher, which was already a messed up comic.
I think there's another one that's even more fucked up than that, but regardless, I started watching it. I'm gonna finish it, and whenever The Boys season 2 comes out, we can do a binge with that. You, me, and whomever else. And then we'll basically be going into it fully blind. Nobody's gonna have any sort of insights to give on what on a rewatch kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, one other thing you mentioned while we were binging this. When it comes to animated adaptations that you want to see Netflix do, you mentioned
Blood Rain.
Yeah.
I feel like Blood Rain, that game franchise didn't get a whole lot of love, and those god-awful movies definitely didn't help.
Well, those movies were made by Uwe Boll, so we shouldn't be surprised.
And let's not forget that
he was literally doing it for a tax dodge.
Well, and let's not forget that the first movie, he used the first draft of the script. And I remember watching this is actually one of the special features for the movie where she's talking about how, I got the phone call from Uwe Boll. He's like, I need the script now. And I was like, whoa, hold up. And called my agent and said, I don't ever want him calling me up ever again. So she did the first draft of the script, sent it to him, and goes, yes, this is good. We'll use this. She's like, are you joking?
That's not even done.
And she said that when she watched the movie in the theater, she slumped in her seat and was laughing because of how bad the movie was. So again,
it's Uwe Boll. We shouldn't be surprised. He doesn't make movies to make good movies. He makes movies as a fucking tax dodge.
But yeah,
Uwe Boll is one of those things we could almost do a binge of his terrible movies, but
we're gonna need to skip 2 of them.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. It's like we'd probably start losing the will to live one movie in, or we'd be like, we need a lot more booze if we're gonna do this.
That we will.
But no, we've got plenty of other stuff that we can do before we even need to delve into terrible stuff.
But yeah, like in terms of like if they were to do a Blood Rain one, definitely get there. I don't know if
Blood Rain, she was like killing like vampire Nazis and
Nazis in general.
Well, there you go. Who doesn't love seeing Nazis get slaughtered? They made all the Wolfenstein games for that.
It kind of reminded me of that. It was like it's like Wolfenstein, but with a Dampier as the main character.
A vampire. I know she's a daywalker, kind of like Alucard is. But
that's literally what she is. You know, all the strength, none of the weakness. She's got the 2 blades on her arms. But yeah, that's another one. That's another franchise that they definitely need to do because I feel like Blood Rain did not get enough love. The first two games were great. Third game, that was a side scroller, which I have nothing against side scrollers. It's just that they completely changed the formula for the games. It's kind of like how for Castlevania went from side scrolling to the whole like 3D platform. Yeah.
Which is a fine genre, but it sort of feels like a betrayal of the Castlevania genre in general, the Metroidvania.
And they eventually went back to the side-scrolling shit too, with the much later games. I like how they reference other characters, or they've been bringing in characters from like other Castlevania games into this.
Like Hector and Isaac.
Yeah,
and they name drop Leon. I keep waiting for them to name drop Simon somewhere.
I was expecting in the Belmont family home and their museum in the basement for them to be like a hallway that showed like all the previous Belmonts. Like you have Simon on
they had some portraits on the walls, but they didn't really focus on a lot of them. They're just sort of there in the background.
Have it to where like Alucard was just like looking at all of them like, okay. You know.
But then again, I'm kind of glad they didn't. They just sort of putting stuff like in the background as references, like the Medusa head and the cross that we spotted in the cabinet.
Well, yeah, that was something for like the older fans.
And the whip that he finds in the hidden chest, the Morning Star.
I can't remember if that was in the original game or not.
I know
it was in one of them.
Yeah, well, but that's things like that, and just sort of subtle stuff in the background instead of having to cram in as many references as they possibly can. I like that they're restraining themselves instead of just dumping in all the fan wank that they can. They're making it a little bit more logical, and they're doing a slow burn towards a climactic confrontation.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm honestly hoping that after they get done with this story arc, because again, don't know what happens in season 3, but I'm honestly hoping that we get like a season that's devoted to Simon. To basically show him fighting Dracula, Medusa.
Given that we saw some flashback stuff in these episodes, granted mostly stuff dealing with the generals, and them, who season 3 is 10 episodes, I believe. It's a little bit longer than this season. Just a little bit. So it'll probably be a 5 and 5 binge when we do that one. But that could get, who knows, maybe in season 3 they'll do a little bit more flashbacks to deal with Alucard, sort of showing what happened when he was growing up, what it was like living with Dracula as his father, and
to show what happened between him trying to fight Dracula and then him waking up.
Yeah, and him fleeing Dracula's castle and going to Grezit, where he basically locked himself in a box for a year. And maybe one about, or maybe give some focus on the Belmonts, sort of explore exactly what happened and how the Belmonts were excommunicated and hunted down.
Yeah,
because we find out here that the Belmont estate was burned down when Trevor was only like 12 or 13, and he's now in his late 20s. I would guess.
It looks like he's in his 20s.
Mid to late 20s.
He's not getting
He's not too old for this shit. But
yeah,
he's seen some shit, but
he's still pretty spry. He's still pretty. He's able to take on monsters and priests,
and he knows a lot of this stuff just basically, clearly from the training that he got when he was a kid. We from the town defense that he did in Grezhet when they managed to successfully fight off the Night Horde.
Granted, it looked like he was probably preferring to just sit at a bar and just get drunk.
Well, given that he's got his own reasons, he has plenty of his own reasons to want to hate all of Wallachia himself. That they hunted down his family, and whenever anybody finds out that he's one of the Belmonts, people react with hostility.
It's literally a case of all the things that we did for you people, and this is how you pay us back.
Yeah, basically.
Even the
and even Sypha is, her people, the speakers, are discriminated against and treated as scapegoats for whenever something goes wrong. Granted, that's in Grezhet at the very least because the fucking bishop was there and looking for literally any excuse he could to blame anybody but himself for what happened.
Even what's the name of that chick? Carmilla?
Yeah, Carmilla.
Even she was just like, I thought the Belmonts were extinct.
Yeah. Yeah, she is a schemer. Granted, she seems like she wants to at least go through with the war, but she doesn't trust Dracula because she can tell his heart's not really in all this. As Hector put it, the fire's gone out of him,
and you kind of see that too. Like, he looks tired at times.
Mm-hmm. But in her flashback, she talks about she was turned by this older vampire, and over the years he just became cruel. And I did note down what she calls, like, he went mad and cruel, and she finally just killed him and swore that she would never follow a mad, cruel old man ever again. And when she came to Dracula to join in the war, what did she find? A mad, cruel old man. So she's clearly arranging things to try to overthrow Dracula, but she's being very circumspect about it because she knows she can't go up against Dracula directly.
Yeah, because he's too powerful. Because remember the threat that he made to Godbrand, where he's like, "I will rip you in half. I will
cut you in half and bite your heart out."
and Godbrand starts to sweat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Godbrand is not exactly a small dude. But next to Dracula, who's like 8 feet tall.
I imagine he will lose a few inches if you take those boots off.
Yeah, well, that's true. But
plus, I'm pretty sure that like other things like the cape doesn't help either.
Well, the cape doesn't add like a foot of height to him, and even those boots are only going to add a couple of inches. He's at least 7 feet tall.
Plus, another thing that they don't really specify is how old is Dracula in this.
That's true. It's one of those things where, grab the phone and do a little search on Vlad Tepes. How old? When was he running amok? Kind of stuff.
Are you gonna look at Vlad the Impaler or
Vlad Tepes? That's Vlad the Impaler. Yes.
Yeah.
1448. He was born in 1431, and the series is set in like 1476, 77. So he's basically he became like the most powerful vampire in the world in the span of like a few decades. Carmilla is clearly meant to be an older vampire, not least because she comes from a story that predates Bram Stoker, Bram Stoker's Dracula, but. There's a whole lot going on there that's just sort of like...
There's a lot of mystery to the characters in this show.
Yeah. And that's fine. You don't need to give a full, detailed backstory to every single character.
No.
Giving us little peeks at stuff like they've done with Hector and Isaac and Carmilla are all fine. Gives us some insight into their motivations and their personalities. But yeah, I'm definitely enjoying this. We're definitely going to have to finish the binge at some point later this week or whenever your schedule will allow.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're working now like 5-6. You're now working like almost 6 days a week.
6 days this week, yeah, and working a nice long like 10 to 9:45 shift on Tuesday.
Yeah. So, but that'll be something. We'll work that in as soon as we can, so we can wrap up this and have another one in the can. And we still have current plans to do another ramble cast with some of the others.
And finish the second half of
Mobile Suit Gundam. So look forward to that, constant listeners. However many of you there actually are, I think we're in the double digits for most of the stuff that we've put up on CKCC Radio now. But at any rate, that about wraps it up for this binge. So for Chris, I'm Jay, and we'll see you when we do our next binge. 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 We do our